What is up? I am Justin Young, and he is Griffin Greenburg, and this is the Fastbreak, only on HoopSeen.com, one of our mini podcasts we have on HoopSeen TV right here on YouTube. We appreciate you watching, and if you are, make sure you like and subscribe and be a part of our community, and hit that bell so every time we put a new video up, you get it right away. And Griffin, first of all, welcome to the HoopSeen podcast family. You've joined us out here on the West Coast, which is much needed for me. I've kind of been on this island out here in the West for a while. We're excited to get you on board, my friend.
Thanks. I'm excited to be on board.
You and I have been to a lot of really high-level events already this young season together, and we went to a really, really good one over the weekend. That was the HoopHall Classic in Scottsdale, Arizona. Man, it felt like it was a 4-day event with a girls' event on Wednesday, but it felt like it was a month-long event. But in a way that was really good. There was so much talent on the floor over the course of the 3 days of boys action. Is it still spinning?
I mean, all the HoopHall events always bring it. It's so fun to watch, and this one definitely impressed. So, yeah, it's still hard to process so many, good games and high-level competition, but definitely a fun one.
Yeah, there were so many good games. And you're right. I mean, the matchups that we had, that's what you kind of come to expect with HoopHall events, right? You're putting – alphas against alphas, and you've got some real high-level matchups of high-level players. For me, it's a great opportunity to kind of think through some things, or maybe I got some stuff wrong when it comes to evaluations. Maybe I got some stuff right, some justification of some opinions, and there's a lot of learning in between. And so in this show, we're going to do two things. We're going to talk about the players that impressed us, and then we're going to talk about the teams that impressed us, and then other things that kind of came along the way. So we had two different perspectives throughout the event. I was up in the stands breaking my back up on the bleachers the whole time, and you were down on the baselines and sidelines doing a great job of collecting videos and photos and talking to players in between. So some two really good points of view throughout the event. But really, let's kind of jump right into it. When we talk about the HoopHall, like I said, we talk about superstar players. Right out of the gate, Griffin, for you, like if you had a definitive, like that was the king of the castle over the weekend, was there anybody in particular that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned before we started recording Cody Williams, and I'd have to agree. I mean, very impressive, weekend by Perry. 2 blowout wins against 2 very good teams, and he was the star in each game, aside from Brendan Silsby in the second game. But very impressive by Perry. Cody Williams did great all over the court. I mean, we know what he can bring to the table. 6'7", 6'8", point guard who has great size, really lanky, and just does a bit of it all, and he kind of showed that this weekend.
It's funny. Cody's an interesting player. Like I've had a lot of conversations, most notably with my friend Travis Branham over at 24/7, who really, really loved him over the course of summer. My kids, full disclosure, go to Perry, and so I see Perry quite a bit, just because it's it's in the neighborhood and it's really easy for me to get over there and go see. And on top of that, they're a tremendous team. Won a state championship last year, and I always thought I saw it, but I didn't get to see the things that Travis saw on a national level when he played with Vegas Elite. And he was like, Justin, I'm telling you, man, like his upside, and I never doubted the upside, but I never really saw like a definitive. Now I've seen him 3 times, and in these 3 games this season, I've been absolutely floored by how good he's been and how much impact he's been able to make. Listen to these numbers real quick. Let me run through these with you, Griff. 17 of 29 shooting from the floor, okay? And in the game against San Ysidro, it was 10 of 19 from the floor. Did a great job just getting to the rim. 41 points, so average 20 points a game. 8 assists per game, 8 rebounds a game, and about 6-7 assists per game. I mean, just touched every category of the event. And I don't even know if the data really supports on how much of an impact he made in both of those games. I feel like every possession, you could link him to every single positivity that Perry came through.
Definitely. I'd have to agree. I'd love to see, those plus-minus numbers if we can have
them.
They're definitely on the charts.
I know. He's the versatility and the ability to play multiple positions, to me, has really always been the value, but we're starting to see it at a more consistent level. And to your point, they did it against 2 really good teams in Cardinal Hayes out of New York, and then they did it against San Ysidro out of San Diego. So 2 really good wins for Perry. And really, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but undefeated, and they're looking even better. I think they're even better than what they were last year, even as a state championship level team. So big praise for Cody Williams, and a guy that – I probably got it wrong. I probably was a little low on him. And I understood the upside, but for me, like seeing these last games, he's been tremendous, absolutely tremendous. Who else jumped out to you, Griff?
VJ Edgecombe, we were really in agreement on this. He was very impressive all weekends. I mean, That they had a nice win to Wasatch, their second win in the NIBC. I think this team, and we'll talk about them a bit later when we get into teams, I think they're going to be very scary in the NIBC for a lot of teams. They've kept it very close in each of their games this year. I mean, they've only lost to IMG by 6 in a very competitive game. But he's been consistent all year long, and I was excited to see what he brought coming into the weekend. And he obviously, balled out. He had 2, I think it was 15-plus point games. He had 15 and 18. But he's an exciting player to watch and definitely on the rise.
He was, I'd never seen him before, full disclosure. And so for me, I was absolutely blown away. I thought he was the guy that I got most excited about when I left the gym. I had like a 40-minute drive home every night, and I just kept thinking about, man, where does he stack up with the other guys in this class? His motor was endless. I mean, the guy had a rechargeable battery. He was always on the floor. His desire to go get a bucket was there. Highly athletic. I thought his three-point shooting was really good. Native out of the Bahamas, he goes up to LuHi. Has been really, like you said, he's been balling out. He's not ranked in the composite at all, which blows my mind. In the 24/7 rankings, we're going to debut him in our rankings very, very high. Like I was blown away. There were some friends of mine there that cover the NBA draft that are really well versed in the draft, and we were raving about what VJ was and as a player. I don't know yet. I haven't looked at the rankings yet because it's part of I still have to dig out of how many players that you and I saw at the HoopHall West. But I think VJ, I think you make a really strong argument that he's a top 40 guy. Nationally, maybe even better than that. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. I loved him.
Definitely. I agree.
It'd be interesting to see where his recruitment goes, too. He had some good schools recruiting him, Georgia Tech, Mississippi State, Charleston. I'm forgetting somebody else. St. John's, Central Florida, some schools like that.
And he just picked up a North Texas offer yesterday as well.
North Texas? Well, I think he's going to get more like Texas and some of those other schools coming in now, too. So VJ Edgecombe, I think, no doubt about it, blew us away. Another player that I thought played really well, you mentioned IMG. IMG, really impressive, not surprising. But I thought Bryson Tucker looked really, really good offensively. I thought he brought some things to the table. Great size, great three-point shooter. His numbers from 3 was 6 from 9 from 3 in 2 games. When that ball left his hands, I felt like you kind of thought it was no doubt about it was popping the nets. Looked really, really good on the offensive, worked really well off of high ball screens. Offensively, man, I thought that guy was really, really dangerous as a 3-level scorer too. Some real physicality. When we look at the 2024 class, there's this narrative nationally too that, like, I don't know who's the top overall guy. There's a lot of contenders for that top spot. And at times, Bryson Tucker was a player that I'm like, man, I get it. I think he's a player that needs to be in that conversation, even as a top 10 guy. When you saw him, what were your takeaways with him?
I feel like I noticed how big he was down the stretch in games. I mean, he struggled a bit in the first half against AZ Compass. They had a few other guys in the mix that were playing very well. But in the second half, he really turned it up a notch, hit some very timely shots, like you mentioned, got to the hoop, and he draws contact very well when getting to those areas.
He does. He got to the foul line and converted really well. He was 10-12 from the foul line of the course of those 2 games. Yeah, you're right. The positional size, like when you watch him a little bit backed up off the court, you're like, okay, he's like, but then you see him up close and personally, man, he's a big physical guard, big guard. I know that's a term that gets thrown out there a lot. He's legitimately a big guard with some great physicality that comes with him. Man, I really like where he was at. I talked to our national editor, Josh Tech, today, and he was raving about him from what he did at NBA Players Camp as well. They only played 1 game at Duncanville High School, no doubt about it, a powerhouse. I saw them earlier in this season at their home court for the scrimmage ran by our friend Kellen Buffington. And Ron Holland did it then, and Ron Holland once again did it again at this event. And I thought down the stretch, what were your thoughts on him as a clutch player?
I mean, he's so dominant and turns it up as the game goes, but he's such a good clutch player. We saw it this weekend, and they won by 11 against Cardinal Hayes, but the game was much closer. I mean, the Cardinal Hayes was up by 15 at the end of the first quarter. So it's pretty crazy to see, how the game kind of flips. And a big part of that was because of Ron Holland, 22 points. I mean, I think he had 10 rebounds, so double-double. But just very impressive. And in the clutch, he's definitely a guy that you want to go to.
In high school basketball, I think he's one of the best finishers and closers there is, right? Like you remember, well, you're too young, but like in the old movie Major League when they pulled in they pulled in Charlie Sheen's character and you knew the game was over and the music plays. Like Ron Holland to me in the fourth quarter at the high school basketball level is as good as it gets. He'll finish the game. He'll close the game out. There's a reason why Duncanville is so good. Last year, they won it on a buzzer beater. They always have some great magic when they come out here and play in Scottsdale. Ironically, they left them and Notre Dame out of California, who had a great game by Dusty Stromer, by the way, who was phenomenal as a three-point shooter. Right. They went and played each other up in Utah. I wondered if they were even on the same plane when they left Scottsdale to go to Utah to play each other. But certainly we saw some good things from Ron Holland, who's going to Texas and really one of the premier players for the Longhorns. And then we wanted to come up with just 5 guys, but I think we had a hard time coming up with just 5 guys. I mean, you can find our top performers right now on HoopSeen.com, but for the sake of this conversation, I think we can probably extend it out to 8. So we'll kind of keep it rolling. Let's stay in the category of Perry for a second. We talked about Cody Williams and how good he was. But Koa Pete, it seems like game in and game out, just a sophomore, that dude just delivers like a UPS guy at Christmas, man.
He does. He's so fun to watch, and it's interesting because, Perry has these 6'8", 6'9" players who can take the ball up and really have a good feel and court vision for the game when it looks like they may not, just based on their size. But Koa is one of the more elite scorers of the class. Obviously, he's top 5, top 3 recruit in his class. And he definitely deserves that.
It's been fun to watch. He's so consistent. I think that's the hardest part now for players, particularly young players, to be consistent, and I think that's the thing with Koa. I've never seen him not play well. I've never seen him not get a double-double. I've never seen him do what you expect a big man to do, and that's play with some physicality around the basket. There may not be I put this in one of our little graphics cards. I put it out during the event, and I said that he reminds me a lot of Paolo Banchero at the same age. Paolo wasn't the multi-purpose threat that we know of him now with the Orlando Magic. And even when he was at Duke, at the same age as a sophomore, primarily was a paint scorer and was really tough to stop because of his physicality. Koa's the same way, where he's just so hard to guard and he's so powerful. He just kind of does whatever he wants. And you look down like, oh my gosh, the guy's got 22 points and 12 rebounds. It's the third quarter. So he's a real quiet but effective guy. I can't say enough good things about him. It's been a really good weekend for the class of 2025. We talked about, Josh and I did, about Cameron Boozer, what he did against Isaiah Collier out in Atlanta. And again, I keep saying it, I cannot wait to see Koa Pete and Cameron Boozer go head-to-head in the summer. I hope the stars align where that happens. Maybe it's an NBA camp or one of the other shoot camps or something like that. But that's a matchup that I think that we've got to see. Who else kind of stood out to you when we're talking about our players from the HoopHall Classic?
Yeah, you mentioned class of 2025, and they had a great weekend. I want to bring in another player from that class, Josh Dixon. I thought he was very impressive at HoopHall. Did have an early end in the second game, but you can see how involved he is with his team. Really tough guard from Atlanta. I know Josh Tech has actually covered him over on his Twitter a bit within the last few weeks, but he's a very tough guard. He can get to the hoop, scores at multiple levels, and I mean, he was very impressive for me.
Competitive, man. That competitive juice is there. I've known his high school coach, Alan Whitehart, for my whole career, and is a good friend of mine, full disclosure. And he's had great guards that have played for him over the years. And Alan, even coming into this event, was like, man, I'm telling you, you're going to love Josh Dixon. He absolutely goes nonstop motor, competes, microwave guy. I think both games he had like 15, 16 points at halftime for both games. So quick score, really imposes his will. I'm with you. Like, this is my first time to really see him in person and really focus in on. I maybe have seen him before, given my time in Atlanta, but this was the first chance I've had to really key in on him. That dude's going to be a real problem. We have so many guards like him that are around the 6 foot size, great speed, that come out of Atlanta that have unbelievable success at the college level. That's a great observation, I think, by you on Josh Dixon. We can't finish this conversation without talking about one of the highest ranked players in this field, and that was Ian Jackson out of New York. And offensively, the guy knows how to get buckets. I was just adding up his data before we got on the show. So it was 8 for 17 from 3. I think that might have been over the course of 2 games. Well, let me think about this. Dusty Stromer may have had eight threes in one game, but I think Ian Jackson 8 of 17. We saw it was weird. He had basically the same exact game twice. He had 21 points in both games. He had high turnovers in both games, but he was also 4 of 8 or 4 of 9 from both games as well. So really like where he's at as a player. I think he's a quick bucket. It's funny. I don't know. A lot of people have number 2 overall. We have number 2 overall in the class. That might be a little bit too high, but I can tell you right now, if I'm an opposing coach in college, that guy's going to be a freaking ulcer trying to figure out how to guard this dude,
Yeah. I mean, very impressive player. He's definitely proved he can play against top competition.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unfortunate in their second game for them. They got blown out by Perry, and I think he scored half the team's points pretty much.
Yeah,
he did. Crazy, but he's proved he can play at the highest level and succeed at the highest level. But yeah, that first game, like I mentioned, they were up by 15, and he was playing. It wasn't even so much him in the first quarter. It was a lot of his teammates doing well. But he picked it up throughout the rest of the game and had a very solid game against Duncanville despite the loss. But he's a player that definitely deserves to be in that top 3 spot in his class.
Yeah, great offensive player. I mean, terrific offensive player. Tons of players. We've got tons of coverage this week on HoopSeen.com for our top overall performers. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well. We got lots of great photos coming from the lens of that man, Griffin Greenburg, who's a part of our HoopSeen staff out here on the West Coast. Is on the baselines and sidelines all over the place. Make sure you like and subscribe this video and subscribe to HoopSeen TV right here on YouTube. Share this with your friends, your family, your grandma, your old coach, whoever it is, man. We want to make sure we get this out there and spread the love. And Griffin, you've been all over the country, really traveling out. You've seen a lot of NIBC stuff. We were up in Utah together, saw some great matchups there. You were out in Wichita, saw some great matchups up there. And of course, we saw these teams here. We went back to the Border League, and we've seen all the best teams that there is in the country. So I want to talk about teams for a second, because there seems like there's about 7 or 8 teams at the very top in that top line across the country, where some years we're like, oh, Montverde's the number 1 team in the country, and then everybody else is chasing them. This year feels like it's a really, really tight race for the top dog spot. And there seems to almost be like a cannibalism at the top too, where, let's rewind it. We saw AZ Compass beat Montverde, and who else did they beat? Oh, Sunrise in Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. And then the week after, what happened in Wichita?
Yeah, AZ Compass fell to Wasatch. And then yesterday, we mentioned this past weekend, they fell to IMG.
Yeah, and so we get a rematch of Wasatch against Compass, and Compass wins without scoring a 3-pointer. I think, by the way, your dad may have actually pulled this stat up. I think it was AZ Compass is 0-40 for 3 against Wasatch this season.
That's
0-30. Some crazy number. Crazy number. So you've got those guys, and then, like you said, we saw IMG, and they beat AZ Compass. So you see, like, just this, A beats B, B beats C, and C beats A, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know how people are going to rank this season out. But let's from this sample of the HoopHall Classic, who was the most impressive team that you saw in this field?
I think it was IMG for me. I mean, they're coming off a lot of questions following that blowout loss in the NIBC to Montverde, and they didn't look phased at all, looked very in control. I love the pace that they have, and it looks like as a team, each player knows what their role is and what they have to do on the court, and as well as the coaches, in order to succeed. And we definitely saw that down the stretch this weekend. They were up by, I think it was 14 or 15 against AZ Compass, who then made a late game push thanks to Jordan Ross, but weathered the storm, obviously, and 6-point wins in both games, but they did look very good throughout the course of each game.
As is the case for most years, and for really any team at the top at the high school level, the depth is really something that stands out. But the thing with IMG that always stands out to me, and this is an absolute compliment to their program, is those guys physically look different, in large part because their training regimen that they do down in Bradenton. And I think you can look at a guy like Jamie Kaiser, who was always a big, strong kid to begin with, but we saw 2 versions of Jamie Kaiser this weekend. We saw in the first game where offensively it wasn't really clicking all the way for him, but he killed it on the boards. I think was really, really important on the glass. The second game, big time shooter. He got in those corners, knock down some threes. The future Maryland commit or player rather, to me was really impressive in multiple ways for IMG. But the next game it could be Amir Ali, it could be Bryson Tucker, it could be Jacoy Hutchison. I mean, there's so many guys on their roster that you can point to and go, he's going to be a problem for them. But I'm with you, man. I thought IMG, throughout all these teams that we saw, they were the most impressive team. And I think if you did a power ranking for me in the moment, here we are December 12th, they're probably the team that has to sit above just because of the wins and the teams that they've played. But again, pardon me, I think we got 7 teams that are right there at the top. To continue that thought, Griffin, I think LuHi, I thought Long Island Lutheran, man, those dudes blew me away on how good that team was. And I think the new addition to the NIBC, they have to be considered as one of those teams that's a contender for Geico.
Definitely. Like I mentioned, they dropped those first few games, but all those were very competitive. And like I said, they only lost by 6 to IMG. They're a very exciting team, played with a lot of energy, and they really work well together. I mean, there's just so many different pieces. It seems like VJ Edgecombe has a very good game every game. But there's other guys who are really, picking it up. I believe it's pronounced Arierne, Godswill Arierne. He's been great this season so far for them.
Great.
Double-double against IMG. He had a very strong game. We talked about Jaden Ross. He was very good yesterday for them. I think he might have won player of the game as well.
Can I talk about him for 1 second? I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm glad that you brought him up. When we were talking about top performers, we should have talked about Jaden Ross, honestly. Like, it's funny, man. So 2 things. Pandemic, which is an easy excuse for everybody, and then just me going from the East Coast to the West Coast, is I don't see a lot of guys from Northeast quite like I used to. This is my first time to really see Jaden Ross. This dude's tremendous. Man, we have way underranked, and I think Connecticut's class, like, holy crap, I knew they were good. We had them in our top 5 after the early signing period. After seeing Bryson Tucker, to think about who else, that him and Stephen Castle together is as good of a backcourt or wings or whatever you want to call those guys as there is in the country. Jaden Ross, to me, if I'm an NBA scout, I'm putting a book together on him that should be this thick already. That dude's tremendous, man. Tremendous.
Yeah. He does so much on the floor. He can score at times. He's a really good glue guy for the team. I think he had 9 assists in one of his games.
Yeah.
He really makes that team complete, as well as those other players that I mentioned. And they play with so much energy and intensity. And they're probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, watch in the NIBC.
I agree. I think we have some really good teams in that league, no doubt about it, but they're so good defensively that they kind of muck games up a little bit and they win a little ugly, which is totally fine. Listen, if I'm a coach, I'm just trying to win, man. I don't care if it's a beauty contest winner or if it's the ugliest puppy at the pound, man. I do not care. I want to win. That being said, to your point, I couldn't wait to watch LuHi. There were all the teams that were here this weekend. I thought LuHi was a team that I was super geared in on, and I couldn't wait to watch. I'm with you there. Let's talk about AZ Compass for a second. So talking about mucking it up and winning defensively, they're not a team that I think anybody on their team is going to go out there. I don't know. You would know way better than me. Has anybody scored more than 20 points in a how do I say this? I don't mean to say this disrespectfully. Against like a top-notch opponent, has anybody scored more than 20 points on that roster?
I know what you're saying. It's I believe the most is True with 19 against Wasatch last week. So, but they're a team. They're not going to have a lot of guys score a lot. They have so many contributors, and they really go 11 deep. They play everyone from their top player, their most minutes played player in Mookie Cook to all the way to the bottom at Vince Delano, who's very good, by the way. He brings a lot of intensity to that team, and I actually think Vince is one of the guys that makes the team work at times. He's brought them back in multiple games so far this season. I mean, like we saw Justin in that Montverde game, he only played 4 or 5 minutes and got hurt, but that's when AZ Compass was down by, I believe, 7 or 9 in the first quarter, and he really brought the energy. So they have a lot of guys that can do that come in and bring instant energy. We've seen a few slow starts from them. Yesterday was a pretty slow start that we saw from AZ Compass, or 2 days ago, excuse me, in that IMG game. But, they have so many players that can come in and just pick it up and turn the team around. I think their defense is the main thing I've been impressed with. If they're not going on offense, which we've mentioned they've struggled a bit so far, their defense is very elite at times. And I think that's centered by Mookie Cook and Marcus Allen.
Yeah, Marcus Allen, you're right. Got some great minutes from him. Yeah, it's funny, man. To your point, I mean, they legit are 11 guys deep, and I think there's a couple of teams in the country that are that deep. But defensively, all those guys, if you are a guard, man, you ain't playing. It's that simple, and I think that's how they're going to win a lot of games. And it's a credit too. I think when you look at some of the teams that they played, I thought when they played Wasatch this second game here in Phoenix, they were still very, very good. By the way, talking about great players, Colin Murray Bowles talking about a player that's had a great season so far. That's South Carolina's future South Carolina big man. He's been phenomenal for Wasatch. We saw, again, more good stuff from Jeremiah Johnson as well out of Oklahoma. It was really, really good up in Salt Lake. Let's talk about Perry. Let's talk about them for a second. They are undefeated on the season. There's this huge – people think there's this huge gap between a basketball-centric type of private school, right, or schools that are in the NIBC versus your Scholastic, the schools that you drive down the street and there's this huge school with a big parking lot and a marching band and all the things that come with the normal Scholastic school. And, Perry, man, I think you got to put them the rankings now have more prep schools or more basketball schools than there are Scholastic schools is where I'm trying to go with this.
Right.
But Perry, man, they look like a team that, again, they won state championship in Arizona last year. I think they're even better than what they are this year. Really key pieces, some great maturity. But, man, when I was putting this list together, I think IMG had more impactful wins. But Perry, their version of winning to me was the most impressive, I thought, at the HoopHall Classic.
Yeah, I mean, they did so in dominant fashion against two very good teams. And you're right, they should make a big splash in the rankings for sure. They've proved it and they deserve it. And I mean, it's not like they're just playing Arizona teams for the rest of the year too. I believe they're going out to HoopHall in Arkansas this coming weekend as well. So they're going to play some top competition. And the competition they play in Arizona is not bad at all either.
Well, the game I went to when they played at Liberty, like a road game, it was awesome, man. It was a great atmosphere. Liberty's a really good team, a contender, I think, also here in the state of Arizona. But to your point, though, I mean, they're getting out there. They're playing a really competitive schedule, and they're delivering when they have to. A matchup that I'd like to see is the last thing we're going to talk about here, and that's Duncanville. They only played one game. Again, we talked about Ron Holland, his closing ability, but Duncanville, a powerhouse, no doubt about it. A lot of people have in the top 5. That's a matchup. Pardon me, that's a matchup that I'd like to see. In fact, I'd like to see a tournament or, actually a tournament where it's Duncanville, Perry, Wheeler, some of these like traditional Scholastic powerhouses. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see those teams compete against each other. Perry against Duncanville from this past weekend would have been a game that I would have loved to have seen. So, man, a lot to talk about. And you know what? We can do this show next week and have a whole different list of teams. And I think we can just still be right on basically what we say from what's going to happen at the TARC and other events, City of Palms, and other events that are happening all over the place too. So as we wrap things up here, Griffin Greenburg on the show, we're going to be all over the West once again. I'm headed out to Las Vegas for the TARC Classic. We've got a prep school division. We've got a Scholastic division. That'll be coverage before the Christmas holidays. And after the Christmas holidays, you're going to be out Damien, which is absolutely loaded. I think they have like 500 teams or something like that out there for that event. And all of them are very, very good. What else do you have on tap coming up? Any other sleeper stuff that you got coming up?
So you mentioned I'm heading out to Damien. I'm also going to try to head out to the Holiday Classic a bit down here in San Diego. They always put on a very good event. I believe they got some good teams this year as well. Coronado, I've been talking to some of the guys there who are playing out there who's, always brings a competitive game, and Sebastian Mack and T. Bartlett and some of those guys over there. So that should be fun. Going to try to go into those two because it's in the same time frame. But it should be an exciting end to the month, end to the year for high school basketball in California.
We always say on these shows that December is really one of our most favorite months that there is. Man, we've gotten long on this show, which I love, just because we had so much to talk about from the HoopHall Classic. It never seems to fail. I didn't get COVID this year from the event, thank goodness. I think that's where I got it last year. So that in and of itself is a win, which means that we can be fully healthy to get back on the road. Griffin, man, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to get you back here on the show on the fast break and do this some more after our holiday events that we have out here in the West.
Definitely. Let's do it. I'm excited.
I love it. I love it. Make sure you follow. What's your Twitter account for people to follow you?
At Griff Greenburg. So everyone go follow me there. More content on the way, obviously, articles, photos, video. We're adding that to our Instagram as well. So very excited about that.
I love it. I love it. Make sure you like and subscribe to HoopSeen TV as well on YouTube. We're going to have way more stuff coming out here in the next couple of months too. So for Griffin Greenburg, I'm Justin Young. We appreciate your watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, share it with your friends and your family and all the people that you love and love basketball. And we'll see you next time right here on HoopSeen.com.